This is John Batchelor. Thanks to my partners at Scala.com, I am on the road again, this time across the Pacific to the most modern capital on the planet, Tokyo, with my co-host Christopher Nixon Cox. We will be ranging widely to interview leaders in the culture, from Japanese professional baseball to the Japanese space agencies to our host, Foreign Minister Taro Kano. Please join us and Scala.com as we hear the success of one of America's strongest allies across all of Eurasia, Japan. Presented by Scala Inc., delivering digital transformation to your enterprise. I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of the Daily Beast is here, and we turn to the matter of China and artificial intelligence. We're told there's a space race about artificial intelligence. We're told that the Chinese are in the lead. Of course, that is political talk, and what are the facts? The facts are that within these last days, headlines have rocked everybody. Congress, Silicon Valley, San Francisco. Headlines associated with the very prominent capitalist, Peter Thiel, who's famous for the saying, we wanted flying cars and we got 140 characters. So it's a man with a sense of humor. Fine. But in addition to his sense of humor, he gets very sober-minded about China's threat to the U.S. Existential threat is the way the Navy puts it. Fancy words. That means they're after us. And Peter Thiel has commented about Google in an ironic fashion. Google rejecting working on AI for the United States of America. But Google reported working on AI with the Chinese through cutouts, I understand. To help us understand all of this is a man who alerted us some time back before this was headlines with Peter Thiel. This is Brandon Weichert of the Weichert Report. Brandon, a very good evening to you. What do we know about Google, AI, and China? Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. What we know is that Google has decided to expand and double down on their efforts to develop artificial intelligence, and they're going to do it not in the United States, not work with the United States military, but they're going to do it in China. And they're going to do it in a way that is probably going to benefit the People's Liberation Army. And it's very frightening, and it's an existential threat, as you said, and it's one that one of our biggest and greatest companies is helping to fuel.
And Brandon, this is not just some sort of casual investment they have in China. They established the Google AI Center in Beijing, and also they've got two tech partnerships, also in Beijing, one with Tsinghua University, the other with Peking University, the two premier educational institutions in China. And they have this budding partnership with the University of Science and Technology of China for this quantum lab in Anhui province, which you've been talking to us about. And you've mentioned that the People's Liberation Army is an indirect participant in that lab. And when you add together that Xi Jinping has this notion of civil-military fusion so that there is nothing that is civilian anymore, that adds up to Google knowing that it has been directly or indirectly feeding information and technology to the Chinese military.
That's 100% correct. That's right. And, for me, AI is important, but the big thing is quantum computing. That's the next revolution. That's the equivalent of the cotton gin or the automobile. And what's going to happen, I think, is that Google's focused on AI, but as we know from other U.S. companies that have gone into China for one thing, once they get in, they start getting enticed by the Chinese government to invest in other areas. And I think that the fact that the Chinese government, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, is developing this huge quantum computing center. Once Google's in with their AI center, the Chinese government's going to say, hey, well, you're investing a lot in quantum computing. Why don't you move your guys over to our quantum computing center, the only one in the world, and start, doing your research here. It's already set up. The infrastructure is already built. And Google will do it because it's an easy way for them to get a corner on the market without really caring or knowing that they're actually giving technology that will revolutionize warfare to the next great superpower. and that superpower doesn't like us. And they don't like that the United States is as powerful as it is, and they've got it out for us.
So, just a moment. I want to make sure everybody understands what Gordon and Brandon are talking about has the attention of the leadership. This is a tweet from Donald Trump within these last days. Billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel believes Google should be investigated for treason. He accuses Google of working with the Chinese government. A great and brilliant guy who knows this subject better than anyone. The Trump administration will take a look. So please continue, gentlemen. We're talking about what is now part of the policy of the government of the United States to look into this mystery.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that there's an issue here, and it's not so much a Google issue as it is a U.S. government issue, because what Google is doing is despicable, near treasonous, traitorous, all the rest of it. But unfortunately, what Google is doing is legal. And It seems to me that there's there's actually 536 people who are often found in Washington, D.C., who can fix this. That's the President of the United States, 100 senators, and 435 members of the House of Representatives. So I'm proposing you get President Trump to issue an emergency order that criminalizes what Google is doing, getting them out of the business, and then you have Congress actually making it permanent by legislation.
That's right. And furthermore, I would add, I love the idea, Frank Buckley talks about this too, my friend. He talks about how you have to basically make the tech transfers that are totally legal right now, have them classified under the federal law as a bribe, and those companies will stop doing it. Second of all, I talk about this all the time, expand the powers of the Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, give them much more power to deny China the ability to buy out American tech firms like semiconductor firms or any other kind of tech firm where they can then get our technology and reverse engineer it and become dominant in that sector. Also expand the ability of the Defense Innovation Unit, DIU, to work closer with the tech community to both educate them and to make sure that they understand that the nature of this threat. Because part of this also is there are some of those tech people who are so fixated on the bottom line, they're just inoculated to the idea of a national security threat. They don't understand it. And so DIU, one of the things that organization does is they basically track the supply chain. They track how the private sector is being influenced and affected negatively by trade with China, particularly the tech sector, and that we need more of. That agency needs to be funded more. It needs to be expanded. And those are some of the things that we can do as a government to ameliorate this threat. I mean, we can manage it still, but the window's closing rapidly.
Brendan, you read Silicon Valley's buzz. They love to talk about themselves.
Yes.
Is this an alarm to them, or is it shrug, that's Google's world, not ours?
I think it will only be an alarm if the Trump administration takes action, and I think it will only be an alarm if the president can actually start doing things to make an example out of Google, and they start having their bottom line.
Well, heck, he just made a threat. I mean, even if I'm just a minor league PR person, I think I have a pitch to Google that they've got to tell a story before they get their story told.
A leading tech executive told me yesterday at a meeting that all of his CEOs, his fellow CEOs in the tech sector, are scared out of their minds of Trump because they don't want to get noticed by him. Because once he notices them, then everything starts to go wrong. And so I think I think you're right. The mere threat on Twitter was enough. I think it's the first shot across the bow. But he can't let up because Google's way too invested right now in China. You're going to have to push them a lot harder and offer them incentives and try to get them not to go. Because once they're in China more fully, that's it. China's got them then. That they're over there.
Yeah,
you know, it's like the Borg from Star Trek. They're just going to assimilate.
Gordon, wasn't there a story? We did the story, 2011, where there was routine trite phishing into Gmail at Google to discover connections of people who were protesting in China, and they wanted to go through Gmail. Don't you remember the story, Gordon?
This was, I think, Yahoo.
Yahoo. Yeah, it was in 2000. It was several years ago, but that was Yahoo. And the Chinese government told Yahoo, if you want to do business here, buddy, you're going to have to open up your server.
No. It was Google before they were kicked out. Google's Gmail was
I
compromised.
see what you're saying, the 2010 incident. Yes.
Yes.
Well, they stole the source code in addition to hacking into
And Google left in a self-righteous fit.
Right. But as somebody told me recently, that's also because Google wasn't really getting anywhere in terms of their investment initially in China, and so it really wasn't that big of a hit for them to leave, and they actually got a short-term bounce from that big moral play.
I'm in New York City. I'm talking to San Francisco. I'm talking to New York City. People who work for Google live in Hudson Yards. I see them every day. Yeah. They're prominent. They're sophisticated. They're young. Some are Asian. Some are American. They come from everywhere. What the heck are they doing? I know they protest about politics. I know they have partisan passions. What the heck is going on? Are they silent on this, Brandon? They have a ferocious internal memo system. Nobody protests?
No, I don't. I think when it comes to other countries, particularly like China, former colonies, these people at Google are very radically left. And so they have, I think, a skewered view of historical justice. And I don't think they really care if they're helping the Chinese because they view the United States as the great threat. They think the United States is immoral, that we're xenophobic, we're racist, we're, whatever. And, all the stuff we see on campuses is pretty much what's going on within the minds of Google's leadership and within their employees for the most part.
Does that make sense, Gordon, that you can regard the Communist Party as benighted and the U.S. is not? Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense. And so I think what you have to do is you have to criminalize the behavior, and then you start putting people in jail. Like 219 years in jail.
Is it true to say that a Nobel Prize laureate died with cancer unattended in jail? And his wife disappeared, Gordon. Isn't that accurate?
That's right. Well, Liu Xia has now reappeared and left China. But you're right, John. Liu Xiaobao was essentially murdered by the Chinese government.
And so I asked this question of Google listening. All right, fine. You listen on your iPhones. You're young people. You have jobs. I'm glad for you. Your parents are proud of you. However, what Brandon is reporting, what Peter Thiel is reporting, what the president is reporting is either a fact or it's fiction. Brandon, fair? It's either fact or fiction. And
it's a fact.
I understand. You assert that it's a fact. It's incumbent upon the people who work at Google. You have lives in front of you.
Right.
Yes, find out whether it's fact or fiction for yourself.
Right.
Don't depend on Bloomberg or CNBC. Find out for yourself. Gordon, that's a fair question to ask of people.
It certainly is. But it's, at the end of the day, it's not Google's job to either define or implement U.S. national security policy. That's the job of the President of the United States. And so really it's great to start out with a tweet, but it's more important to have an emergency executive order that prohibits the activities that we've just been talking about.
And no deals in the trade war. Trump has got to keep pressing. He's got to keep putting pressure on the Chinese. This is not about trade. It's more than trade. This is a new Cold War. We've got to keep pressing.
Brandon Weichert of the Weichert Report, who was way too early with this, and now he's just in time. Gordon Chang of the Daily Beast. I'm John Batchelor.